Okay, here. Okay, so the government will do consultation to consider the interests of different stakeholders so that the decisions will fit the society's needs. Okay, also, and the government should also welcome public participation through different means like consultation, forums, exhibitions, and workshops. Okay, so these are the four ways for the government to welcome public participation. Okay, this is exhibition in which the participants look at the models of the future development to assess the impact of development. And this photo it was taken in a public forum in which some experts expressed their concerns about the impacts of redevelopment plans. Okay, so the government can also do impact assessments，即係評估嗰個發展計劃嘅影響 impact assessments. So the government will do some mitigation measures，一啲舒緩嘅措施 mitigation measures to minimize the impact of any redevelopment plans. And this can reduce conflicts. Okay, so for example, the government needs to do social impact assessments. That means they need to consider the possible consequences of development for the affected community. For example, when the Sha-Tin Tokugawa line was built, it's been now that Sha-Tin and Tokugawa railway line is being built. The government needs to assess what impacts will be brought to what impacts may occur. For example, one significant negative impact is that is the noise from construction and also the traffic congestion caused by roads being blocked. And it is useful to evaluate the social needs of different stakeholders so as to minimize undesirable social impacts. Minimize undesirable social impacts. So the government always visits the flats, always visits different households to assess possible undesirable impacts on residents, when the redevelopment is launched. And the Hong Kong government also carries out impact assessments to identify possible or potential impacts of a project upon surrounding environments. And this kind of assessment is usually done for construction works. So before any major construction work starts, the government or the constructors must obtain the approval, from the government based on the reports from the environmental department. For example, when the high-speed rail was built, the government carried out some assessments to assess what kind of environmental impacts would be inflicted upon the residents living along the railway line here. So ecological, for example, some landscapes would be destroyed during the construction of the high-speed rail. So what could be done to preserve the natural environment? the fisheries, the fish ponds, noise. Of course, the construction of the high-speed rail will produce loud noises. How about the landscape? Okay, some mountains had to be removed to make way for the railway. Okay, how about cultural heritage? There may be some temples, some traditional construction were situated along the railway line, and then the government needed to remove the structure and rebuild it somewhere else. Land contamination. Now, contamination means polluted. 污染啊. Contamination means 污染. Okay. So during construction, some polluted materials might seep into the soil, and that led to land contamination, waste management, water quality. So the construction waste, where to put the construction waste? And then how about the water quality? The construction would inevitably pollute water. So how to process the polluted water around the construction site? And the air quality, okay, the vehicles, the equipment for construction would emit exhaust fumes, polluted air. That's why, okay, when the high-speed rail was constructed, the government had to do assessment in the 9 areas. 9 areas. Okay. So, why did the government do such a large assessment? This is because assessments like this could motivate developers to establish and manage or do environmental control measures so as to protect the environment. And then these measures, environmental control measures, could minimize the negative impacts of developments during construction and operation stages. So that's, for example, because of the assessment, many households have moved away from the railway line. As a result, they are now not disturbed by the noise from the high-speed trains. And based on the environmental assessment, the government will decide whether to grant an environmental permit or not. Environmental permit, 通行證啊，許可證, okay, and environmental permit, which allows construction companies to start their construction projects along the railway line. Yeah, and also, of course, okay, any permit is issued based on environmental assessment result and also the view expressed by the public. For example, during the construction of the high-speed rail, there were large protests about the removal of a small village called Choi Yun-chun, because the residents in that small village were reluctant to move to somewhere else, and the government had to settle, okay, the disagreement through judicial means in courts, okay? So the two sides went to courts to settle the issue. And there are some examples of mitigation measures. For example, okay, when the toll highway was widened, okay, noise barrier was built to protect 4,500 residents along the railway. And then when the Tongchung New Town was developed, Okay, some natural landscapes like natural hills have been preserved, okay, as a natural barrier. The natural hill has been preserved as a natural barrier between the residential area and also the airport, okay? So there are always alternatives in development plans. So one-dimensional solution will rarely satisfy the needs and interests of all stakeholders. So so every development plan must have different alternatives, different versions to the public. Okay, so the public can choose the most appropriate alternative to go ahead. And this is a kind of flexible and open strategy, and it is and this plan is open for adjustment. And sometimes negotiation and modification have to be done to define the best fit solution. Okay. So, okay, do you have any questions now? Do you have any questions now? Okay, do you have any questions now? So, if you have no question, we can go on, okay, with our lecture. So, this is an example of Kai duct development. So there are three land use options for Kai duct development. The first option is a city in the park. And then the second option is Kai duct glamour. And the third option is sports by the harbor. And so to resolve conflicts, the government can pass certain laws, and law can help resolve conflicts. For example, reclamation of Victoria Harbour has been a controversial issue in Hong Kong because over the last 100 years, reclamation has narrowed the Victoria Harbour substantially. That's why many people have protested against further reclamation to preserve the harbour. Okay? And here, for example, in the case of reclamation along the Victoria Harbour, the government or the court has to follow three principles. Okay, first of all, compelling, overriding, and present need. For example, the reason why the Central Wanzhai bypass was built is that the traffic congestion in Central was very serious. So there was an urgent and present need to build a bypass. 點解中環灣仔要道要起要填海？因為真係嗰個交通擠塞好嚴重啊，所以要起咗去舒緩交通壓力。And then the traffic congestion was a compelling and overriding reason to justify the construction of the Central Wanzhai bypass, or there was no viable alternative. For example, maybe okay, so for example, the reason why the government built the Central Wanzhai bypass was that there was no other way to alleviate the traffic congestion in Central. Okay, the government might have tried different means to alleviate the traffic congestion in that area. However, the construction should minimize any disturbance or impairment to the landscape. One way is to minimize the area of reclamation as much as possible. OK， 咁同時間咧要即使可能要填海都要減少個影響盡量將個影響減少到最低 minimum impairment. OK, so these are the three principles guiding the court judgment on the reclamation of Victoria Harbour. So, is Hong Kong developing in a sustainable way? First of all, okay, there are different government bodies responsible for facilitating and promoting sustainable development in Hong Kong. For example, the Council for Sustainable Development 可持續發展委員會 the Council for Sustainable Development 可持續發展委員會 and then the Sustainable Development Division 可持續發展嘅小組係嘅政府嘅 okay, so remember the Council for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Division. Okay, so what are the duties of the Council for Sustainable Development? This council advises the government on the preparation of a sustainable development strategy. Okay, 佢俾政府一啲建議去點樣預備一啲可持續發展嘅策略。And then the Sustainable Development Division provides technical assistance. 提供一啲技術建議、技術支援。And it also provides support to government, bureaus, and governments. Okay? For example, during the construction of the high-speed rail, the Sustainable Development Division taught the Transport Department to taught the Transport Department how to assess the environmental impact on along the railway, on the areas along the railway line. Okay, so the sustainable development helped or taught government departments to do environmental assessment for different projects. Also, the Sustainable Development Division educate the public about the importance of sustainable development. For example, maybe they taught the public, okay, to recycle rubbish so as to reduce city waste. Okay, so in other words, the Sustainable Development Division helped the government to do different assessments and also educate the public about the importance of sustainable development. So remember, the Council for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Division. So there are many indicators, okay, to assess. There are many indicators to assess sustainability. Economy, okay, for example, the construction of a high-speed rail can create many employment opportunities. The construction of the high-speed rail can create many employment opportunities in the construction sector, okay, or the operation of the railway station can also create many jobs. So, and then the high-speed rail can bring many mainland tourists to Hong Kong. Oh, and that's why the economic return of the high-speed rail is estimated to be very large for Hong Kong. Okay, and then natural resources. Okay, so energy consumption. For example, I want to ask you, do Hong Kong people consume a lot of natural resources. Okay, now I am going to ask each of you a question. The Hong Kong people use or consume a lot of natural resources. And then yes or no. If yes, please tell me some examples of how Hong Kong people consume natural resources. Kendall, maybe you can give me the answer. Tango and Kata, you can give me your answer. Iron, maybe you give me the answer. Oh, Mark, I'm looking forward to your answer. So please give me your answer. Whether Hong Kong people consume a lot of natural resources，香港人係咪消耗好多天然資源？俾例子我，係啦，快啲。
No,
No, really no.
I think so.
Wrong. It really depends on who.
Yeah. But in general, I think Hong Kong people consume a lot of natural resources. For example, lighting. I think most of you do not go to bed at 7 p.m. Okay? Yeah, fuel. For example, there are many vehicles in Hong Kong. The fuel for cars, fuel for electricity. Okay? And then Hong Kong people now, okay, take away or the containers also consume natural resources. Hong Kong people produce a lot of household waste. Hong Kong people produce a lot of household waste. Okay, so actually Hong Kong people, yeah, plastic. So Hong Kong people consume a lot of natural resources. So according to a study, if every person in the earth, everybody in the earth lives, okay, the Hong Kong lifestyle, we need two earths to sustain our way of living. We need two earths to sustain our way of living. 即係話，如果個個都好似香港人咁生活咧，起碼要2個至3個地球先夠使啊，就係咁啊。OK， 好。So biodiversity. So biodiversity means preserve the natural habitats. One example is the Maple Marsh along the high-speed rail. Actually, the high-speed rail passes the Maple Marsh. 個高鐵係經過個米埔嘅 so how can the government, so the railway company has the responsibility to build a railway, okay, deep underground to minimize the impact on the environment. Hello, Ken? Yeah. So the government needs to build the... Hello? Yeah. And then leisure and cultural vibrancy. So here, for example, when you see the new buildings, okay, when you see the tall buildings, okay, in the redevelopment plans in the urban area, you always see there is a small park in each new development. So why do developers leave or make a small park in the new development plan? This is because because the government requires developers construct a small park in any new development areas, okay, to preserve leisure and cultural vibrancy. To preserve leisure and cultural vibrancy. How about environmental quality? Okay, Hong Kong, unfortunately, has high emission of CO2, carbon dioxide 二氧化碳。香港嘅碳排放量係非常之多嘅。For example, many Hong Kong people travel 4 times a year. So the emission from planes actually contribute to the global warming a lot. And mobility, the cost of road transport as a ratio of GDP. For example, Hong Kong's transport fee is quite high. Yeah. So the cost of transport as a ratio of GDP is quite high in Hong Kong. And the new indicator is health and hygiene. The expenditure on public health care in Hong Kong actually spend quite a lot of money on public health care. And and then society and social infrastructure. For example, the Hong Kong government spend a lot of money on education, public housing, and then 綜援, social security. So the Hong Kong government scores high marks in the health indicator and also in the society and social infrastructure indicator. So then, in other words, if a society needs to become a fully sustainable society, it needs to meet the requirements of 9 indicators. So it's not easy for a city to become a sustainable one. Okay. So, okay, any questions until now? Any questions? Any questions until now? Okay, so the Council for Sustainable Development actually organize different workshops and then public forums and community activities to promote the concept of sustainable development. Okay, so this council, okay, sustainable development, okay, have different workshops and activities, okay, to educate the public about the idea of sustainable development. Okay, any questions until now? Any questions? However, these organizations, both of these bodies are advisory in nature. What is advisory? 佢哋係諮詢組織. They have no power. That means even though you give me suggestions or not to go ahead with the development plan, I can still go ahead. I can still start my development plan if the government allows me to do so. So the real power lies in the government. Okay? So, and then when those sustainable development concepts are implemented, these concepts are usually achieved with time and difficulty. For example, the public may not be willing to change their lifestyle to lead to contribute to the sustainable development. For example, the government has urged people or encouraged people to do waste sorting for many years, but still many households have not done any sorting of rubbish to facilitate recycling. That's why it takes time for the public to lead a sustainable way of living. Yeah. Okay, so do you have any questions now? Do you have any questions now? Okay, so if you have no question, we will go on, okay, with the discussion part. Okay, so compared with Portland in the USA, assess the level of sustainable development of Hong Kong. So here. The Hong Kong, unfortunately, has no well-defined energy policy regarding vehicle fuels. So the government made the use of ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel to subsidize, okay, taxi drivers to switch to LPG. So the government did not force taxi drivers to switch to green energy. It just offers incentives. So that's why Hong Kong is less likely to be a sustainable city in terms of energy policy. How about solid waste management? Okay, do you think Hong Kong has succeeded in solid waste management or recycling? I give you 1 minute to type your answer. Please explain whether Hong Kong has succeeded in waste management. No. So why? Why no? Why Hong Kong? Why the Hong Kong public has failed to, or why the Hong Kong government has failed to manage waste successfully? Why? Yeah, composters not exist in Hong Kong. Good. Yeah, you can never see any composters in Hong Kong. Food waste is not handled properly in Hong Kong. There are not many compost facilities to turn food waste into useful things. Yeah, so that's why the Hong Kong government, yeah, of course they are not. Yeah, you can never. Yeah, you recycling bins are just scattered around the city, and it's inconvenient to do recycling in Hong Kong when you are on the street. Yeah, excellent. So, okay, so solid waste management is poor in Hong Kong because, for example, although the government has launched plastic bag levy scheme, the public still uses a lot of plastic bags because the levy scheme is not deterrent enough to stop people from using plastic bags. And then waste cycling is a failure for the government. For example, the government has to extend or expand the Trengganu landfill. And then the municipal waste charging scheme is still up in the air. It has not been carried out. Okay, so Hong Kong is not a sustainable city. How about green building? Do you think the buildings in Hong Kong are environmentally friendly? Okay, please give me your answer. Do you think the buildings in Hong Kong are environmentally friendly? Do you think the buildings in Hong Kong use a lot of energy? Yes. So how is the energy used? Especially in commercial buildings, the energy is used in which facility? In commercial buildings, the energy is consumed in what type of facility? Yeah, electrical appliances, especially air conditioning. The housing area, housing arenas. Yeah, yeah. So and yeah, large apartments and yes. So Hong Kong buildings consume a lot of energy, and then you rarely see green rooftops. Okay, you rarely see green rooftops. Okay, in Hong Kong, actually, green rooftops can reduce the temperature of a building. As a result, less energy will be consumed in air conditioning. Unfortunately, very few Hong Kong buildings have green rooftops. And that's why Hong Kong, the buildings Hong Kong actually consume a lot of energy in air conditioning. Yeah, solar panels, but unfortunately, the buildings in Hong Kong are very small, so there is not enough space to put a lot of solar panels at the rooftops. Okay, there's not enough space to put many solar panels on the rooftops. Okay, yeah. So Hong Kong is not, yeah. So here, promote of green design, promotion of green design. Okay, for example, buildings are not made to build green rooftops. Okay, how about sustainable food? Do you think Hong Kong? Okay, I mean the food supply in Hong Kong is sustainable on environmental terms. Do you think the food supply in Hong Kong uh, is sustainable environmentally? Okay, actually, the food supply in Hong Kong is not so environmentally friendly. Why? Now, first of all, Hong Kong does not grow any food, so and most of the food is imported from China. Okay, and the transport emits a lot of carbon dioxide, and then the packaging also produces a lot of waste. Yeah, so that's why let's look at here. There's no well-defined policy, and then most importantly, it depends heavily on imports. Most Hong Kong food is imported from China. And only there are only small-scale organic farms in Hong Kong. Okay, so local farming is important to make our food supply sustainable environmentally. Okay, so how about preservation of historic resources? So can you give me an examples of historic buildings preserved by the government? Yeah, use some land in the new territories and grow crops, of course, but the farms in the new territories are very small now. Okay, because many large farms have been turned into residential buildings。即係種田發唔到達啊嘛，起樓係發到達，所以啲人就起樓咯，將啲田賣咗俾發展商起樓咯，就係咁啊。好啊，就有冇啲歷史建築喺香港啊？俾啲例子啊！Give me some examples of historic buildings in Hong Kong. Tango. Please give me some examples of historic buildings in Hong Kong. Okay. Any historic buildings in Hong Kong? Murphy Manor. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Also the PMQ. Okay, in Shangwan. Also the central the former central police station. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the slides. Okay, now Hong Kong has revitalized some historic buildings. Okay, for example, the Hong Kong Observatory in Tsim Sha Tsui, but because Hong Kong is a modern city, it has to undergo redevelopment plans to maintain competitiveness. That's why many historic buildings have been demolished to make way for new development. Okay. Oh, how about plan for economic development? Is it sustainable? Okay, now I give you the answer because it's quite difficult. This part, there's no concrete planning. Actually, Hong Kong relies heavily on the property sector, on the on the tertiary sector, like the legal sector, the education sector. Hong Kong has very few factories, and that's why the Hong Kong's economy is vulnerable for the turbulence in the global economic environment. Okay, so yeah, here. Let me conclude. Okay, to assess whether a city is sustainable or not, we should look at their solid waste management and recycling. Yeah, and also green buildings, construction, sustainable food source, preservation of historic resources like historic buildings, and also plan for economic development. Okay, yeah. So suggest some measures to make Hong Kong a sustainable city. So each of you, okay, most of you, okay, please give me some suggestions how to turn Hong Kong into a sustainable city. Okay. Now this is the last part of the lesson. If anyone gives me the suggestion, I can end this lesson immediately. So please give your suggestions on how to turn Hong Kong into a sustainable city. Okay, hurry up. Yeah, stop using oil fuel cars. Yes, stop using oil fuel cars. Yes. Use electric cars. Yes, good. Good. Yes. Other suggestions? Yeah, don't cause pollution. Yes. Now let's look at the answer. Good suggestions. Let's look at this. Okay, economically, diversify Hong Kong's economic structure by supporting the development of green industries and then value-added manufacturing industries, value-added manufacturing industry like the electrical industries, medical equipment industry, etc. Okay, so environmentally, promote energy saving by turning off by making it compulsory to turn off all lightings after midnight to reduce light pollution. Okay, so now this is the end of the lesson. Do you have any questions? Any questions? Now, if you have no question, we can end our lesson now. Okay, thank you. Okay.